The sunlight spilled across my office window, gilding the edges of the city's skyline below. From here, the mayor's floor, 20 stories up, I could see everything that once felt so small, so ordinary, so laughable to outsiders. The morning hum of traffic was steady, the aroma of strong coffee drifted from the corner of my desk, and the soft silk of my navy blouse clung to my shoulders in a way that reminded me just how far I'd come. I leaned back in my chair, tracing my fingertip along the smooth wooden edge of my desk, imported oak, polished and rich. But it wasn't the furniture that gave me pause. It was the phone buzzing against the surface, lighting up with a name I hadn't seen in years. Madison Clark. The girl who once laughed loudest when I admitted where I was from. The girl who had rolled her eyes and whispered, "Who even cares about that forgotten town?" The girl who taught me shame before I even knew how to defend myself. Her message blinked on the screen. "Olivia, I'm visiting your city next week with some friends. Heard you've made something of yourself. Would love to reconnect." I smiled, slow, ironic. My city. The one they mocked, dismissed, and ridiculed.
And now?
They were coming here, not realizing they'd have to shake the hand of the very woman they once laughed at. Because I wasn't just Olivia from nowhere anymore. I was Mayor Olivia Hayes. And I had been waiting for this moment longer than they could ever imagine. I wasn't always this composed. In fact, there was a time I wanted to bury the name Willow Creek so deep in my chest that no one could ever dig it out. That was my hometown, a quiet on the map, tucked between rolling cornfields and a river that swelled every spring. To me, it was home. The smell of fresh pies cooling in the corner bakery, the church bell on Sundays, the stubborn pride of people who worked with their hands. But to others,
it was a punchline.
I remember one night in particular, junior year of high school. We were on a school trip in Chicago, surrounded by bright city lights that made my little town seem invisible. A few kids asked me where I was from. When I told them, their laughter was sharp, cutting. "Willow Creek? Isn't that just a cow town? Bet they don't even have decent Wi-Fi out there. No wonder you dress so plain, Olivia. Small town, small dreams." My throat tightened, my palms burned as if all their eyes were pinning me to the wall. I wanted to speak, to defend the place that raised me, but shame clamped down on my tongue. All I could do was swallow the sting, my fingers trembling as I adjusted the cheap bracelet on my wrist. That night, I sat on my grandmother's porch, tears staining my cheeks. She was the only one who could pull the truth out of me. Her hands, wrinkled and warm, folded over mine as I confessed how embarrassed I felt. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "Olivia, don't you ever be ashamed of where you come from. A tree without roots topples in the first storm.
But
You've got roots deep enough to build something bigger, stronger. Remember that." Before she went inside, she pressed something into my palm, an old brass key, heavy and worn smooth. "This is from your grandfather's workshop," she told me. "He built half the homes in Willow Creek with his bare hands. Carry it with you. When the world tells you to forget your home, hold this and remember who you are." I curled my fingers around that key, its ridges digging into my skin like a promise. That night, I made a silent vow. I wouldn't run from Willow Creek. I'd leave to learn, to grow, but one day, I'd return. And I'd make them regret ever laughing at it. Leaving Willow Creek was both the hardest and bravest thing I'd ever done. The morning I packed my single suitcase, jeans, 3 blouses, 1 worn pair of heels, I tucked that brass key into the side pocket. It felt like carrying my grandmother's faith with me. The city was overwhelming at first. Towering buildings, endless noise, faces that didn't know me and didn't care to. I worked in a diner during the day and studied political science at night. My fingers smelled of coffee and grease, and sometimes I'd look down during lectures and notice chipped nail polish, a reminder that while other students carried designer bags, I carried exhaustion. But exhaustion didn't scare me. What scared me was failing, giving those kids more reasons to say, "Told you she'd never make it." During my second year, I met Professor Daniels, a seasoned, sharp-eyed woman who taught American governance. She noticed me lingering after class, always scribbling more notes than required. One day she asked, "Hayes, why do you care so much about policy in small towns?" I hesitated, then told her about Willow Creek, about the laughter, about wanting to prove everyone wrong. Instead of laughing, she smiled.
Good.
You've got fire. Now let's sharpen it. She became my mentor, introducing me to city council internships, leadership workshops, and people who believed in fresh voices. Still, I kept my progress quiet. On social media, I posted nothing but the occasional coffee photo or sunset shot. I didn't want Madison or anyone else knowing how far I was climbing. I wanted my success to hit like thunder after silence. There were nights I doubted myself. Nights when rent was late, when ramen noodles were dinner, when I stared at the brass key and wondered if it was foolish to keep holding on. But each time, I remembered my grandmother's voice. Roots make you strong. The small wins began stacking. First, I landed a city council assistantship, then a nonprofit grant to rebuild rural libraries. When I gave my first public speech, my hands trembled so badly I nearly dropped the microphone, but the applause afterward told me people believed in my vision. Step by step, project by project, I carved a name for myself. By the time I was 30, I'd managed campaigns, drafted policies, and raised funds for rural infrastructure. Yet every achievement felt incomplete until I pointed it back to Willow Creek. Quietly, I funneled grants toward the town, a new library, a refurbished community center, scholarships for local kids. Each time I visited, the streets looked a little brighter. My people stood a little taller. And still, no one outside seemed to notice. Which was fine. I didn't need the world's applause. I was building something bigger, a future. When the opportunity came to run for mayor, I didn't hesitate. Not of Chicago, not of New York, but of Willow Creek itself. The town that once felt like a burden became my stage. And though outsiders still joked about it, I knew the truth. I wasn't just coming home. I was coming back to lead. The day Madison Clark returned to Willow Creek, the sky was a sharp, flawless blue. I could see her before she saw me, stepping out of a sleek rental car with two friends in heels too thin for our brick sidewalks. Their laughter carried, just like it used to, and it pricked something in me. I watched from the second-floor balcony of City Hall, the place that had become both my workplace and my symbol of victory. Behind me, the office walls glowed with photographs of ribbon cuttings, council meetings, and community celebrations. A framed article hung on the wall. Olivia Hayes elected first female mayor of Willow Creek. And there, on my polished oak desk, lay the brass key my grandmother gave me, a quiet witness to the moment I had been waiting for. "Mayor Hayes," my assistant called softly from the door. "Your visitors are here." I stood, smoothing the silk blouse at my shoulders, my heels clicking against the marble as I descended the staircase. Madison's eyes widened when she finally looked up and saw me. "Olivia? Oh my God, you look amazing." Her voice was laced with disbelief. Her friend chimed in. "Wait, you're the mayor?" "Here." I let the silence stretch, savoring the way their confidence flickered. Then I smiled, calm, measured, the kind of smile that didn't need words to hold authority. "Yes," I said finally, my voice steady. "Welcome to Willow Creek, my city." They glanced at each other, their earlier laughter dying on their lips. Madison forced a chuckle. "Wow, I had no idea you were doing so well. I mean, last I heard you were still well, you know." "Still small-town Olivia?" I finished for her, raising a brow. Her cheeks flushed. I gestured toward my office. "Come in. There's a lot to show you." Inside, they couldn't hide their stares. Their eyes swept over the elegant furniture, the art commissioned by local painters, the shelves lined with awards and books. I caught Madison pausing at the framed map of Willow Creek, the same one my grandfather once used to build homes. "This is incredible," she murmured, almost to herself. I leaned casually against my desk, fingers brushing the brass key. "You know," I began, "I remember how you used to laugh at this place. At me. At the people who live here." Madison swallowed, her voice small. "We were kids, Olivia. We didn't mean." "Oh, you meant it." I cut in, my tone even but firm. Every joke, every snicker, every word that told me I wasn't enough because of where I came from. Her friend shifted uncomfortably, eyes darting to the floor. But here's the thing, I continued, straightening. This town, my town, is thriving. We've rebuilt schools, created jobs, opened cultural centers. Businesses are flourishing. People are proud again. And I am the woman who made sure of it. The silence that followed was heavy, almost reverent. Madison's lips parted as if to argue, but no sound came. For the first time, I saw something in her eyes I had never seen before. Not mockery, not superiority, but respect. And maybe even shame. I let the moment linger, then added softly. So, the next time you laugh at a small place, remember, roots grow stronger than you think. And sometimes, those roots lead straight to power. Her friends nodded awkwardly, unsure what to say. Madison looked down, her voice barely a whisper. I underestimated you. No, I corrected gently. You underestimated Willow Creek. You underestimated all of us. And in that instant, the balance of power shifted forever. I motioned for them to sit. The leather chairs in front of my desk looked far too commanding for women who once laughed at me. They hesitated, then lowered themselves, their perfect postures beginning to wilt under the weight of the silence. Madison was the first to speak. Olivia, I'll admit, I'm surprised. You've done something incredible here. And honestly, I'd love to learn more. Maybe even see how I can be part of it. I tilted my head, folding my hands neatly in front of me. The mayor and me had heard plenty of rehearsed pitches. This was no different. So let me get this straight, I said softly. The city you mocked, the people you dismissed, now you see value here? Her friend jumped in quickly. We didn't mean anything by it back then. We were kids. Immature. I let out a quiet laugh. Maybe. But words cut deep. And some wounds don't disappear just because you've grown older. Their faces dropped. For a moment, I almost pitied them. Almost. But I continued, leaning forward. I'm not here to play the victim. I built this city back up because I believed it deserved more. So, if you want to be part of it now, there will be conditions. Madison straightened in her chair, as if bracing herself. First, I said firmly, you treat Willow Creek with respect. No more mocking, no more belittling. You talk about this city the way you talk about your own hometown with pride. They nodded quickly. Second, if you want to invest here, because I assume that's what you're after, your money doesn't buy you shortcuts. It goes into real community projects, local businesses, schools, programs that lift people up. I could see Madison flinch, realizing this wasn't the kind of deal she was used to. Third, I added, my voice softening but still firm, you leave behind arrogance. Willow Creek doesn't need saviors swooping in for photo ops. It needs partners. People who care. If you can't do that, you don't belong here. Silence. Heavy, deliberate. Finally, Madison exhaled. You've changed, Olivia. I smiled faintly.
No.
I've grown into who I was always meant to be. This city gave me my roots, my strength. I'm just honoring that now. Her friend whispered, and if we can't meet your conditions? I shrugged, calm and unbothered. Then you're welcome to leave the way you came. The door works both ways. The words hung in the air like a gavel. For the first time, Madison looked truly small. Her perfectly polished nails tapped nervously against the chair's armrest. After a long pause, she nodded. Okay, if this is what it takes, then we'll respect it. I leaned back, letting the power of the moment settle. Compassion stirred in me, but it was bound tightly with firmness. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vengeful. I was simply done bending. Good, I said softly, because Willow Creek deserves nothing less. And with that, the terms were set. In the weeks that followed, something unexpected happened. Madison stayed. Not with the same careless laugh she once carried, but with quieter steps, eyes that actually noticed the people around her. She attended town meetings, asked questions, listened. Her friends left after a few days. The pace of small-town life wasn't for them. But Madison lingered, as if trying to reconcile the girl she once was with the city she once mocked. I didn't make it easy for her. I held her to every condition. When she wanted to sponsor a flashy gala, I redirected her toward funding the community literacy program. When she suggested a trendy cafe, I asked her instead to consider supporting the family-owned diner that had stood for 3 generations. Slowly, she learned, and I saw it happen, the shift. The way she stopped seeing Willow Creek as less than and began to see it as something whole, something worth loving. But this wasn't just about Madison.
It was about me.
Some nights, when City Hall was quiet and the hum of the streetlights filled the air, I'd sit at my desk with that old brass key in my hand. I'd trace its edges, remembering the night my grandmother pressed it into my palm, remembering how small and humiliated I once felt. And then I'd look out the window at the city lights, not Chicago's, not New York's, but Willow Creek's. Lights I had helped ignite. It struck me how the pain had shaped me, how every cruel laugh, every dismissive word had forced me to dig deeper, push harder, rise stronger. Without that pain, I might never have found this power. I wasn't the girl they mocked anymore. I wasn't the girl who cried on her grandmother's porch. I was the mayor, a woman forged by roots, by resilience, by a love for her city that never wavered. One evening, as I locked my office, I paused at the door and whispered into the stillness, almost as if speaking to my grandmother. "You were right. Roots matter." I smiled, slipping the brass key back into my pocket, not as a burden, but as a badge. So when people ask me today what drives me, why I lead with such conviction, I give them the simplest answer of all. They mocked my city, now I'm its mayor. And I wouldn't trade my roots for anything.